since it's another day, billions will kneel and pray. Anything to aid escape from the world so cold and gray.
I am Nick.
And I am Rob, and we are the Brohio Podcast.
We cover all of the unknown and much more.
Aliens, true crime, famous murders, monsters, paranormal, and everything that goes bump in the night.
We keep it funny, slightly trashy, and sometimes we like to talk about crapping our...
Nick, we are trying to make a good impression here.
Right. You can find us on all your favorite podcast apps.
We drop new episodes every Monday.
We are a member of the Bomb Pod Media Network. We'd love to talk to you on Instagram and Twitter at Brohio Podcast.
And the Bros of Brohio do appreciate you listening.
We will see you on the dark side.
That's a good boy.
That's a real good boy. That was a good little advert there.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed it.
Promo swap with the fine, sexy folks over at the Brohio Podcast.
Yeah. So go over there and check them out.
I just got done catching up on their stuff last week as I was mowing the grass.
Yeah.
I was listening to their Tupac episode.
Oh, nice.
Which gave me a good number of lulls. At one point, I actually stopped mowing the yard, and I was just fucking laughing, and I look over, and my neighbor's staring at me like something was the matter.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Well, yeah. Well, welcome back to the Bones and Tubs podcast. We're here to talk about the things that we talk about on the show. You know, those time sluts. Every week we talk to you about sluts that travel through time and space to please men throughout the known existence.
Yes. Those are like the space version of the lemon sluts we just got done talking about on our Raw episode.
Yeah.
Which you can get on if you go over and join the Patreon page.
Yeah.
Even though we're not really about sluts.
No, we're not about that. We're a conspiracy podcast, and we talk about conspiracies. And today's episode is going to be fucking juicy. You know, and so juicy, in fact, that we've decided to split the episode into two parts. So next week's going to be the second part of our topic, because when we decided to do it, I started doing the research, and I was like, holy fuck. I was like, this topic is too fucking big for us to try to condense it into one episode. It's just too big of a fucking monster to try to explain it away in one episode.
I like doing these episodes that make me feel like I'm going to get killed.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder if they killed us, will we be like Tupac in the way that we would be like super famous after we were dead?
No, they'd probably portray us as pedophiles.
Heroin addict pedophiles.
Yeah.
We found them in a hotel room with a 9-year-old Malaysian sex slave.
Dressed up like Han Solo and Chewbacca.
Yeah. Boba Fett mask, heroin needles in arm. We shot ourselves in the back of the head with a rifle.
Yeah. If you haven't guessed already, we're talking, today's topic is the CIA.
Central Intelligence Agency.
Pays weight faithfully.
It's a good song.
Yeah, this is a good song.
If I wasn't worried about copyright infringement, I would play some of that too.
Man, that had me salty last night.
I know.
But anyways, so today we're talking about the CIA, that government organization that technically should only be working outside the bounds of the United States, but has found their way inside the United States working.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk to you today about their history and up through the early period and some of their goings-on there. So I'm going to hand it over to my partner to give you the early shit.
Before I get into the history and the creation, I wrote down basically the standard operating procedure of the CIA. And it all goes around a sort of a circular pattern where American business interests abroad are threatened, typically by a populist, democratically elected leader. A leader with interests, in his own people, as far as like he tries to nationalize his resources. He talks about workers' rights, stronger unions, wealth redistribution, and better land usage.
Yeah.
Which, as we all know, is not good for business.
No, not good for the people who fund the CIA's business anyways.
No. And oftentimes, with the help of and on behalf of American business, the CIA will mobilize the opposition by first identifying a right-wing group, typically the military in whatever country it is they decide to give some of that freedom to.
Yeah.
And then they will, as long as the right-wing group promises the CIA that they will allow them to economically rape and pillage the land, then they don't give a shit about anything else.
You'll be rich, but everybody else will suffer.
Yeah, and they'll train, provide aid to in various different ways to these right-wing groups to overthrow the democratically elected government And then typically the group will then begin killing the population of that country, and the CIA just sits back and gets some of that kickback from the American business. It's now making that skrill, which also nowadays isn't just about businesses, but it's all about global banking. So if you notice all the countries that you see in the media, and we'll talk about the media and their role with the CIA, but the ones you see in the media, the bad countries, those are the countries that don't have Rockefeller central banks.
They don't have. Basically, they don't play the bankers game.
Yeah,
the way that the international bankers want you to. So that's why they're bad.
The CIA will, like I said, once they get that lapdog approval from whatever group they decided to put in, they'll work with them, they'll put them on the payroll, then they begin work of training them to overthrow the existing government. Some of the tricks, not all the tricks, but some of the tricks the CIA uses are propaganda, stuffed ballot boxes, purchased elections, extortion, blackmail, sexual intrigue, which I imagine at one point, because George H.W. Bush was a member, he was the head, right?
Yeah, they made him the head of the CIA for a while.
He was the head, so if the CIA wanted to use sexual intrigue for like the Bones and Toast podcast, for example, we might come home from working at the Factory of Sadness and notice like in a all black negligee in the kitchen is George H.W. Bush wearing a pair of high heels as he shoves a dildo in his ass, and he's like, "You want to get on this payroll?" At which point we would probably accept, because what else can you do at that point?
Yeah.
They also would use false media releases about political opponents, infiltration into political opponents' parties, disruption of opposing political parties, kidnapping, beatings, torture, intimidation, gang stalking, which is a good YouTube search, and economic sabotage, death squads, and assassination.
Yeah. So they dabble in all the finer arts of fucking with people, more or less.
With the combined efforts of the CIA and the newly imposed lapdog force, they've created a Revolutionary Guard, a coup is achieved, and it's on to the next one. The victims were historically referred to as communists, but nowadays it's terrorists or terrorist sympathizers.
Yeah.
And normally they're just people like you and me.
Yeah.
The ones that are dying. Mm-hmm. So that's fine. The new government is put in, human rights violations are off the chain. There's an Association for Responsible Dissent, and they concluded in 1987 a report that stated 6 million people had been killed by the CIA operations abroad. And that's admitted. So then, now we're on to the history.
History.
1929, and this was just how far we've fallen.
Yeah.
So, the Secretary of State at the time, Henry Stinson, refuses to endorse a code-breaking operation, saying, "Gentlemen, do not read each other's mail." So that's 29. In 1941, Franklin Delano Roosevelt founded what he called the COI, or the Office of the Coordinator of Information, to be headed up by Wild Bill Donovan. Mm-hmm. Love that name.
Wild Bill.
Let you know what he was all about.
Yeah.
They started raw right in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then in 1942, the OSS was created. Mr. Roosevelt restructures the COI into a newer and more covert form, better suited for covert actions abroad, the Office of Strategic Services. At this time, Wild Bill recruited so many of the countries rich and famous that the OSS was jokingly referred to as "oh so social" or "oh such snobs."
Nice.
1943, Wild Bill manages to recruit the Catholic Church in Rome to act as a center for Anglo-American spy operations, at the time in fascist Italy, controlled by none other than Benito Mussolini.
Il Duce.
So we got two powerhouses now. We got the fledgling American intelligence agencies going back to the old world control.
As I say,
Catholic Church.
Yeah. The Rome was probably completely comfortable with
that's why you should
subterfuge and sabotage.
You should never go into a box with another man that you can't see who tells you he's your only way to God and then tell him all your secrets.
Yeah.
It's probably a bad time.
Yeah. Real bad time.
Let's see here. 1945, the OSS being abolished. At this time, it was said that all the remaining American intelligence services ceased covert actions to return to harmless information collecting, to which Bones calls bullshit.
Yeah.
Because also around this time, while other agencies were hunting down Nazi war criminals, the American intelligence agencies were basically sucking them up. Yeah. They were going over there and they were getting them. They were smuggling them in the country. And Operation Paperclip was used.
I was to say, how else are you going to learn all their juicy secrets if you ain't going to hunt them down and figure out how they did it?
Yeah, Operation Paperclip is a fucking show in itself.
Yeah.
But I just wrote a little bit of notes down here. The stated goal for Operation Paperclip by the CIA, which was one of its many facets, was to absorb Nazi spies and all that, because they had a vast network of spies already in play in the Soviet Union.
And also remember that anything we talk about today could very well end up being its own episode eventually. The CIA is just such a giant fucking beast that some things like, i.e. Operation Paperclip, that's a whole episode. You could talk about just one individual in Operation Paperclip, the rocket scientist who founded NASA, former Nazi. Or later on with MK Ultra, not to jump ahead, but that's a whole episode too.
For sure. One of the most notable ones that they absorbed was Reinhard Gehlen, Adolf Hitler's head spy, who had, among other things, built a vast spy network in the Soviet Union. And with the blessing of Big Daddy USA, Gehlen created the Gehlen Organization, a band of refugee Nazi spies who then reactivated their intel networks behind the Iron Curtain. Some of these other ones they got, I wrote down that were just interesting. Some of you might know the names if you're a World War II file, or a Nazi file, or a pedophile.
Yeah, you never know.
Sounds good. Some of them were Alfred Six and Emil Augsburg, who were both known to have been massacring quote-unquote guests at the concentration camps. Klaus Barbie, a.k.a. the Butcher of Lyon.
Man, yeah, I know Klaus Barbie.
Otto von Bolschwing, one of the Holocaust masterminds. And everybody's favorite, SS Colonel Otto Skorzeny?
That sounds Italian.
I know. That's what I wrote down.
Okay.
A personal friend and longtime 69er of Adolf Hitler. How much did the Holocaust indeed?
Yeah.
You know? Most of the intelligence gathered by these goose-stepping bitches were largely inflated and hid the fact that the Soviets were actually behind due to their rebuilding of their devastated society. But when they built up these lies about the Soviet Union, it ensured that none of these Nazis would face judgment.
Yeah, man, they had to keep a fucking job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
if you're important, you're not going to go before the...
You couldn't go in there and be like, listen, they're not really a threat because their economy is shit and they're trying to rebuild after the fucking devastation of World War II.
Right.
They're not going to say that. They're going to be like, oh man, these dudes,
sick of these dudes.
These dudes, they're fucking crazy.
We'll jump ahead now to 47. The same year that we restructured again, the OSS became the CIA, or Central Intelligence Agency.
It is born.
And one of their first actions, President Truman, in 1947, sends the CIA and military support to right-wing forces fighting communist rebels for the remainder of the Cold War over to Greece. Now, the CIA supported the most notorious of the Greek leaders with a track record of deplorable human rights violations, which is not going to be an uncommon thing.
Yeah, they're not really picky about,
pesky human rights.
The credentials of the people that they back. It's not really about that, They just want to find someone that plays ball.
Yeah. Plays ball with a bat that has nails in it.
Yeah.
Let's see. 1948, the Action Wing is created. The CIA creates a covert action wing inconspicuously called the Office of Policy Coordination, led by a Wall Street attorney named Frank Wisner, or Wisner, I don't fucking know. According to the now declassified charter, its responsibilities included propaganda, economic warfare, preventative direct action, including sabotage, anti-sabotage, demolition, and evacuation, subversion against hostile states, including assistance to underground resistance groups, and support of indigenous anti-communist elements that threatened countries.
All under the guise of trying to stop the scourge of communism at the time.
Dirty terrorists. I'm sorry, communists.
Those fucking Reds.
Anti-American scum.
Those anti-freedom motherfuckers.
This is where I started to get my dick wet intellectually.
Okay.
1949, Radio Free Europe is created. Are you familiar with that at all?
No, I'm not.
I was not either.
Yeah.
And this leads into Operation Mockingbird, which gets my nipples wet.
Okay.
So in 1949, the CIA creates its first major propaganda outlet. Radio Free Europe. Over the next several decades, its broadcasts are so blatantly false that it's considered illegal to publish transcripts of them in the United States. And then in the late 40s, also, we have Operation Mockingbird, I just mentioned. Under Operation Mockingbird, the CIA began recruiting American news agencies and journalists to become spies and disseminators of propaganda. They self-admitted to at least 25 organizations. This fucked me up because I didn't know this. With 400 journalists on their payroll at places like ABC, NBC, CBS, Time Magazine, Newsweek, Associated Press, The Washington Post, United Press International, Reuters, Hearst Newspapers, Scribs and Howard, Copley News Service, and that's just a few, which is interesting. Another little side note, if you pause the show, go to Google and type in Anderson Cooper CIA, you'll find out that he is a CIA asset as well. At the CIA News Network, CNN.
Yeah.
And then you want to take over with Iran?
Yeah, okay. So basically, we're jumping to 1951 here. I'm going to break this down for you. The operation was called Operation Ajax. The leader of Iran, Mossadegh, he was getting a raw deal from the British from their oil industry. At the time, Britain had a pretty good control over it, and Mossadegh wanted he just wanted a 50-50 split of the profit so he could put money back into his economy and back into his people, right? To raise them up out of basically poverty. Britain refused. England refused. UK refused. Whatever you want to call it, they refused. So Mossadegh started making threats.
That would have been a good time for Mossadegh to shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Mossadegh started making threats about cutting off the British and selling his oil to the Soviets. Even though Mossadegh was a fervent anti-communist, he still was making those threats. And at first, the UK tried to get the US involved in this. And at the time, Truman was president, and he's like, nah, I'm good. I don't want anything to do with it. Because first of all, Mossadegh wasn't a communist. See, the thing is the whole story about all the things the CIA had done up to this point had to do with anti-communist stuff. Because it's part of the Truman Doctrine. The Truman Doctrine was basically to stem the tide of the scourge of communism throughout the world, right? Yeah. So it didn't play into his narrative. So he wasn't on board with it. Now, whether or not Truman was legit and he did really just want to get rid of communists, or he was just scum like the rest, that's up to your interpretation. Mm-hmm. But basically, after he left office, Eisenhower took over, and he took an interest in it. So he sent the CIA over to help the UK MI6, which is British intelligence, in beginning the process of deposing Mossadegh. They used a combination of psyops and, like you said before, hiring right-wing extremists, preferably in the military, to overthrow the government, and that's exactly what they did.
Was the Shah part of the military, or was that someone else?
Okay, see, that's the thing. They got the General Zahedi and the Shah together. Like, they had to get them together and agree, like, so we're going to get rid of Mossadegh, you guys take over.
I got you.
Right? So that's exactly what they did. They used a combination of psyops by using media outlets that they had on the payroll in Iran to portray Mossadegh as an unpatriotic and a communist sympathizer. And it worked. People started being disenfranchised and thought Mossadegh really, in fact, was like against his country and da-da-da-da. And then the CIA hired, under the sum about $50,000, rioters to protest and riot around the city of Tehran.
It's weird that we've heard stories about that in the recent news.
Yeah.
Going on here. People hiring protest. Anyway, sorry.
And then 2 days later, they just walked around the city. 2 days later, they paid them again to march around the palace, like the presidential palace or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Mossadegh had to flee. He had to leave. The propaganda worked, and as they portrayed him as a totalitarian dictator, then they deposed him. And they put Zahedi and the Shah in power. And things, as of that point, were back on track for what they wanted, which was to basically exploit the living shit out of the country and take their resources and give them very little money in return. But they did realize, though, that they had to raise the standard of living just a little bit so that people didn't get all fucking, their feathers didn't get ruffled again, more or less. And that's and if you see down the road, there's a lot of fucking shit that makes sense when it comes to Iran and Iran's feelings towards us. Especially, like, if you look at the hostage situation that I think was in 1978, that was direct blowback. It was a CIA, the embassy was more or less just a CIA headquarters. And they fucking threw them out and took hostages. Like, that was the last time we really had any good contact. Well, that was when contact with Iran kind of ceased on a diplomatic level, in a good way. And that was more or less blowback from the people knowing that Zahedi was a fucking tyrant. He arrested fucking all of his fucking all the political dissidents, all sorts of fucking people. He was a terrible fucking leader, and the people knew it.
Also wanted to mention that they were just like every other country for the most part, that they ended up having ties with the CIA because Zahedi and the Shah created the secret police in their country called the Savak, and they were just as ruthless, if not more ruthless, than the Gestapo.
And just a side note, do you want to know how much money it cost in 1953 to
You already know.
overthrow a government?
Yeah.
$7 million.
God damn.
$7 million. That's all it costs.
It's a bargain, really.
Yeah.
I had that down for the same time period as well. And then in 53, I wrote down a note about them starting MK Ultra,
Yes.
which is still in play today under various other names. MK Ultra is a good search on Google or YouTube. I would also look up MK Often.
And if you're not convinced, just go on Netflix and look up the show Wormwood.
Yeah, or
That'll give you a nice stepping stone into the arena and
or
see
Stranger Things is another great
yeah,
example.
and see what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Basically, the milquetoast version of MK Ultra, and just one of the things that they did, that they admit to, the CIA was drugging water supplies in the United States and drugging just like entire villages or towns or people that they selected just to see what happened when they dosed them with LSD without their knowledge or consent, which led to a wave of suicides. And they also, one of their favorite things to do, and I have to assume that this all came about with their dealings with the Nazis and Operation Paperclip, because they were at the forefront of torture and what it could do. They discovered that some people, when exposed to extreme torture, i.e. removing fingernails or putting bamboo shoots under fingernails, the pain was so intense that it would cause an individual to virtually psychologically pass out, and it would create another person to come deal with the problem.
So basically, you're skewing their actual conscious mind because it was so traumatic that it required a person to fucking consciously step away,
split their personality.
Yeah, split their personality,
and then they would hypnotize that other personality to coming forward with code words, and then they would train the other personality to be an assassin. So this person could be trained to kill someone, a target, like somebody might just call you tonight. You might not remember that you've been tortured because they hypnotize you to forget it, right?
Yeah.
And you'll get a phone call at 3 a.m. that's like, Blue Mountain, October. And the next thing you know, you wake up in jail or in court, and you don't remember why or what happened. They're saying, you killed all these fucking people.
Basically the Manchurian Candidate.
Manchurian Candidate, or the guy that shot up that movie theater in, what was it? Was it Colorado?
Yeah.
You know, you look at him and he's all doped the fuck up, like, what the fuck happened?
Yeah, and the thing is like, I find it funny that if you've ever watched the original Manchurian Candidate, which the remake kind of changed things a bit, but the original one, it was supposed to be that the communist North Koreans were the ones who were creating a candidate for themselves, i.e. that's why it's called the Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah.
So it's great that you have a piece of film propaganda that places the ideas that the CIA, which is a United States installation, had created as something foreign and communist.
Of course. No problem. I found that two of the largest contributors to the research money for MKUltra were none other than the Rockefeller Foundation and the Ford Foundation. Interesting.
Yeah.
But these guys, like I said, they were programmed to do all manner of things. They could be spies that were reporting on people. They could be murderers. And they could either forget or they could kill themselves, which is a common theme with active shooters nowadays. I just want everybody to know that just because this was in 1953 doesn't mean it's not still happening here today. So just keep that in mind. 1954, the CIA overthrows democratically elected Jacob Arbenz in Guatemala.
Oh, man. Okay, let me step in real quick. Okay, so I have this one in my notes, too. This is the most bullshit fucking reasoning for this shit I've ever in all my lookings. I had not seen something so fucking crazy as overthrowing a government and creating a coup over fruit.
Right.
A fucking fruit.
They overthrew this guy because he wanted to nationalize United Fruit Company, which was under the control of, I believe, Rockefeller. Yeah, Rockefeller. Interestingly enough, Alan Dulles, the head of the CIA at the time, also owned stock in that company. So they go in there. Arbenz is replaced by a series of bloodthirsty, coccicidal maniacs who killed over 100,000 Guatemalans over the next 4 decades.
Over fruit.
Over fruit.
Okay.
Over money, really.
Oh, but still, it's over the money that's bought from fruit.
I just don't know.
So, like, I'm just trying to wrap my head around that for a second. You're talking. You said 100,000 Guatemalans died
over 40 years. Yeah.
over fruit. So basically, Rockefeller went to his dude in the CIA and was like, "Listen, man, our stocks are kind of right now because they're talking about nationalizing. You think you can take care of that for us? I mean, I know you got stock in it
He's
too.
like, wait a minute, I got stock in that. Fuck them.
Yeah." He gets on the phone. Boop 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 boop. Hey, yeah, go ahead and do it. You know what I mean? Like,
fucking
come on,
crazy.
for fuck's sake.
Let's see, 1954 also. 1954 to 1958. Here we get into Vietnam. Yeah. After
Juicy.
After 4 years of failed attempts to overthrow the communist government of the North Vietnam, the CIA attempts to legitimize a tyrannical puppet regime in the South Vietnam, headed by, I don't fucking know, Ngo Dinh Diem.
I actually practiced this last night. You want to hear it?
Thank God.
Ngo Dinh Diem.
Okay. So there it is. These efforts failed to win the hearts and minds of the South because Diem's regime was opposed to democracy. The CIA's continued failures at a successful regime change leads to a series of false flag attacks and military conflict in the Gulf of Tonkin, which was then used as justification by the United States military and again the American media for Vietnam War, resulting in the deaths of an estimated 1,118,000. Of that number, the military, our military, 58,220 troops were killed from Allied forces, I should say. 440,000 Vietnamese troops and 627,000 civilian deaths. Hashtag democide.
Little on the fact, if you look at the impact over the course of years, considering you're looking at Agent Orange and things of that nature, the impact is even greater.
Oh, and the psychological ripples
Oh, yeah.
in the ether sea of how many generations of people were ruined.
Oh, yeah, like in their psyops they did during Vietnam, Soul Wanderings.
Yeah.
I read about that, too, where they would broadcast these things into the jungles and stuff, basically saying, like, we're the spirits of your dead ancestors.
Yeah.
If you fight for the communists, they will eat your souls, or some silly shit like that.
Of course they will. So that's another pause note worthy of your attention. I would say go to Google and type in Gulf of Tonkin false flag,
Okay,
and it'll take you to the United States Navy's website.
yeah. For those of you out there who aren't familiar with the term false flag, just to give you a good idea of what it is, it's basically when a government decides that they want to go to war with a country, but the country's non-aggressive. So basically what happens is that said government creates a fake attack to make it look like someone else did it so that they can in fact go to war with them.
Huh.
Yeah.
Huh.
Just a food for thought on what a false flag is, if you didn't know already.
Put in some long cut here. We're about to hit the high speed rail.
Okay.
Fast forward button. 1956. Radio Free Europe incites Hungary to revolt by releasing Khrushchev's Soviet speech in which he denounced Stalin. It also hints at an American aid, like either military support or something, and that was fake news.
Yeah.
Because what happened was the Hungarians led a doomed armed revolt. American aid never came. There were 7,000 dead Soviets and 30,000 dead Hungarians.
Jesus. Wept.
1957 to 1973, the CIA attempts coup after coup, one per year, attempting to nullify the Laos democratic elections. All of these were met with bloodshed and failure. They even created what they referred to as Armée Clandestine, a group of Asian merchants to attack their elected leaders of Laos, and were met with so many defeats that the U.S. began bombing. They dropped more bombs in Laos than all U.S. bombs dropped in World War II.
Good God.
This ended up causing a quarter of all Laotians to become refugees and take shelter, like live in caves. Hashtag freedom. 1959. The CIA helps Papadoc Duvalier
This sounds right.
become dictator of Haiti. He then creates his own private police force, Tonton Macoutes, who kill over 100,000 Haitians with machetes. The
I
US,
feel like,
of course, does not acknowledge this or try to stop
yeah,
it.
I feel like that is an inefficient way to kill. I mean, not to say I'm for killing that many people at all. I'm not killing for any people, but I feel like using machetes is the most like you think of the tools, the implements before you, right?
Yeah.
And you do, I guess, in the end of the day, like cost over, the actual psychological effect of massacring 100,000 people with machetes. I guess he said, fuck the psychological effects of my secret police. We're killing these motherfuckers.
Well, You got to think too. It's a lot easier if your actual goal is to just play in the blood.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to play in the blood, machetes are a perfect tool.
Yeah.
1961, and this is also we're getting into a Bones area of fucking psychic erection. The Bay of Pigs.
Oh, man.
The CIA sends 1,500 Cuban exiles to invade Castro's Cuba via Operation Mongoose. Guess what? It was a drastic failure
Yeah.
due to poor planning, because we all know, as my guidance counselor once said, prior planning prevents poopy performance.
Yeah.
There was no security or backing, basically. They just sent them over there to their death.
Yeah.
This was such a failure that President Kennedy fires Allen Dulles as the CIA director. And here we go. This is when we talked about doing the CIA episode, this was probably my number one thing that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
1962. Now, it's publicly admitted that this came from the DOD, but I believe from other things that I've read and looked into that there was a CIA plant in the DOD, and that's where this plan came from. It's called Operation Northwoods. CIA assets were to be used as passengers on a commercial airliner. Mm-hmm. They were basically going to have a commercial airliner take off in Florida filled with quote-unquote college students.
Yeah.
And they were all CIA assets. They were going to fly this plane up like it took off like normal. Mm-hmm. They were going to land it at an Air Force base and then have a painted exact replica of this plane, but it was remote controlled. Mm-hmm. And this was in 1962.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. Mm-hmm. So there's no one on board this exact replica. The CIA assets get off and nobody says shit to anybody.
Yeah.
They then fly this remote controlled plane over Guantanamo Bay and shoot it down and make it look like the Cubans did it. And then we were going to use that false flag as a justification to invade Cuba. This made it through the DOD and all the way through the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It made it to Kennedy's desk before he pulled his dick out of Marilyn Monroe's mouth and pissed all over it. And he said, fuck that.
No.
Yeah. So I don't know why he would get shot or anything.
Yeah, why would Kennedy get his head blown off?
I mean, he wanted a silver standard for money. He wanted us to get out of the Vietnam War. He wanted to stop the CIA from invading another country based on a lie.
He was firing fucking CIA directors and
He was shooting loads in fucking movie stars.
talking about fucking defunding the CIA.
Probably doing coke.
Yeah.
Nose beers, Bolivian marching powder, booger sugar, whatever you want to call it.
And the back of his head blew up.
Yeah. Changed my mind.
Yeah. So, and then, the official story is that a bullet ricocheted.
A magic bullet.
A magic bullet.
Yeah.
It was imbued with
From a communist.
secret magic. It was infused with communist magic. And then shot from a gun by one guy who was acting completely alone. No cooperation whatsoever. Blows the back of his fucking head off. Yeah. Bounces around like 6 different times.
Got him.
And then fucking the one person who could have said, hey, I'm a fucking patsy, gets fucking blasted by a fucking guy with mob ties. And let me throw you out there with this, because we know this for a fucking fact. The CIA has been using the mob for certain operations since its fucking inception.
Right. Just in case any of you guys thought that this whole Kennedy assassination or Operation Northwoods might keep the CIA busy in 62. That's fake news, because they were also in the Dominican Republic at the time.
And a lot of other places. They had already thrown over the democratically elected leader of the Congo.
Okay.
Guatemala, Brazil, and Chile.
Yeah.
For fuck's sake.
This is the last physical note I took here in the book. Dominican Republic, CIA takes out one of the puppet dictators that the United States had supported since the 1930s.
Yeah.
Do you want to know why they took out their favored puppet?
Why?
Because his business interests had grown so large, he actually was 60% of the country's economy, that he had become in direct competition with American business interests. The United States, like I said, had supported him since the 30s. So once you start dealing, you could be the favored puppet of the United States, but don't get too big because they will fuck your brains out.
Yeah. No wonder South Americans fucking hate us.
Everybody hates us.
Well, everybody hates us.
We've been fucking spiking the punch bowl with feces all around the world, apparently. I mean, Brazil, CIA-backed military coup overthrows a democratically elected government. João Goulart, the junta, then replaces it, will in the next 2 decades become one of the most bloodthirsty in history.
Do you notice, though, they tend to do this in, like, what we would consider third world countries, though?
Yeah.
Like the backwaters of the world. You know what I mean?
Places where we just need money. We don't need to have attention.
Yeah.
Brazil, they also once again create a fucking band of secret police who hunt down quote-unquote communists for torture, interrogation, and murder. Often these quote-unquote communists are no more than Branco's political opponents. Later it is revealed that the CIA trains the death squads themselves. 1965. Let me know when you want me to shut the fuck up.
Oh, no,
You
keep
got
going.
anything.
Keep going.
Indonesia, 1965. The CIA overthrows democratically elected Sukarno with a military coup. The CIA has been trying to eliminate Sukarno since 57, using everything from attempted assassination to sexual intrigue, which is probably just like we said earlier, George W. Bush with a dildo.
Yeah.
Nothing more than his declaring neutrality in the Cold War. That's the only reason why. He was neutral.
He just was neutral. He
Yeah.
wasn't going to fight on either side.
His successor, General Suharto, will massacre between 500,000 and 1 million civilians accused of being quote-unquote communist. The CIA supplies the names of the countless suspects. Back in the Dominican Republic, Greece, Congo. 1966, we had the Ramparts affair. Radical magazine Ramparts begins a series of unprecedented anti-CIA articles. Among their scoops, the CIA has paid the University of Michigan $25 million to hire quote-unquote professors to train South Vietnamese students in covert police methods. MIT and other universities have received similar payments. Ramparts also reveals that the National Students Association is a CIA front. Students are sometimes recruited through blackmail and bribery, including draft deferments. 1967. Back in Greece again. Another CIA-backed military coup overthrows the government 2 days before the elections. The favorite to win was George Papandreou, liberal candidate. During the next 6 years, the reign of the colonels, backed by the CIA, will usher in widespread use of torture and murder against political opponents. When a Greek ambassador objects to President Johnson about U.S. plans for Cyprus, Johnson tells him, "Fuck your parliament and your constitution." And then we've got Operation Phoenix. CIA helps South Vietnamese agents identify and then murder alleged Viet Cong leaders operating in South Vietnamese villages. According to a 1971 congressional report, the operation killed about 20,000 Viet Cong. Operation Chaos. The CIA has been illegally spying on American citizens since 1959 with the Operation Chaos. President Johnson, Big Dick Swingin' Johnson, dramatically boosts the effort. CIA agents go undercover as student radicals to spy on and disrupt campus organizations protesting the Vietnam War. They are searching for Russian instigators, which they never find. Chaos eventually will spy on 7,000 individuals and 1,000 organizations.
Wow, so they weren't Russian spies. They really just wanted the war, fucking terrible, shitty war to end.
Fake news. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right?
Bolivia. A CIA-organized military operation captures legendary guerrilla Che Guevara. The CIA wants to keep him alive for interrogation, but the Bolivian government executes him to prevent worldwide calls for clemency. 1969. Uruguay. Notorious CIA torturer Dan Mitrione arrives in Uruguay, a country torn with political strife.
Uruguay.
Whereas right-wing forces previously used torture only as a last resort. Mitrione convinces them to use it as a routine, widespread practice. The precise pain in the precise place at the precise amount for the desired effect is his motto. The torture techniques he teaches to the death squads rival the Nazis once again. He eventually becomes so feared that the revolutionaries will kidnap and murder him a year later. 1970. Cambodia. CIA overthrows Prince Sihanouk, who is highly popular among the Cambodians for keeping them out of the Vietnam War. He is replaced by a CIA puppet, Lon Nol, who immediately throws Cambodian troops into battle. This unpopular move strengthens once minor opposition parties like the Khmer Rouge,
Oh, my God.
which achieves power in 1975 and massacres millions of its own people.
Oh, my God.
1971. Bolivia. After a half-decade of CIA-inspired political turmoil, the CIA backed...
That's me. That's my bad.
I understand. I thought it was over. for some
No,
reason.
the CIA did it.
After a half-decade of CIA-inspired political turmoil, a CIA-backed military coup overthrows leftist President Juan Torres. In the next 2 years, dictator Hugo Banzer will have over 2,000 political opponents arrested without trial, then tortured, raped, and executed. Haiti. Papa Doc dies, leaving his 19-year-old son, Baby Doc,
Oh.
dictator of Haiti. His son continues his bloody reign with full knowledge of the CIA. I mean, there's so much.
It's just, and you keep hearing it over and over again. They just like, they have been fucking plying their fucking trade over and over again. Over what? It wasn't communism, I'll tell
Money,
you that
son.
right now. Yeah, all that money.
Money, and if you're not on our side, we'll write you down and come back, bitch.
Yeah,
Fuck your neutrality.
yeah.
1972, Congress votes to cut off CIA funds for a secret war in Cambodia. We have the Watergate break-in. President Nixon sends in a team of burglars to wiretap Democrat offices at Watergate. The team members have extensive CIA histories, of course, including James McCord, E. Howard Hunt, and 5 Cuban burglars. They work for the committee to re-elect the president. Creep.
Yeah.
Which does dirty work like disrupting Democratic campaigns and laundering Nixon's illegal campaign contributions. Creep's activities are funded and organized by another CIA front, the Mullen Company. 1973, the CIA overthrows and assassinates Salvador Allende, Latin America's first democratically elected socialist leader. The problems begin when Allende nationalizes, once again, American-owned firms in Chile. ITT offers the CIA $1 million for a coup. Reportedly, they refuse that. The CIA replaces Allende with General Augusto Pinochet,
Oh, yeah. Pinochet.
who will, for the first time ever, torture and murder thousands of his own countrymen
Oh,
in a crackdown on labor leaders and the political left.
he's famous amongst hardcore ANCAPs for his tactic of throwing communists out of helicopters.
I wonder where that came from.
Yeah, that's him. That's the dude.
Man,
That dude was off the fucking chain.
now the memes make sense.
Yeah.
CIA begins internal investigations. William Colby, the deputy director for operations, orders all CIA personnel to report any and all illegal activities they know about. This information is later reported to Congress. Watergate, Director Helms fired. 1974, Operation Chaos is exposed. House clears CIA and Watergate. In 74, of course.
Nice.
Hughes-Ryan Act, Congress passes an amendment requiring the president to report non-intelligence CIA operations to the relevant congressional committees in a timely fashion, in quotes. 1975, Australia. CIA helps topple the democratically elected left-leaning government of Prime Minister Edward Whitlam.
That's like one of the first times they've really gone after a first world
Publicly.
Western country, right? I
Right.
mean, in all reality.
The CIA does this by giving an ultimatum to its Governor General, John Kerr. Kerr is a long-time CIA collaborator. He exercises his constitutional right to dissolve the Whitlam government. The Governor General is largely a ceremonial position appointed by the Queen. The Prime Minister is democratically elected. The use of this archaic and never-used law stuns the nation. Same year, over in Angola, eager to demonstrate American military resolve after its defeat in Vietnam, Henry Kissinger launches a CIA-backed war in Angola, contrary to Kissinger's assertions. Angola is a country of little strategic importance and not seriously threatened by communism.
We must overthrow the Angolan government.
This is the time where Trump has... The CIA backs the brutal leader of UNITAS, Jonas Savimbi. This polarizes Angolan politics and drives his opponents into the arms of Cuba and the Soviet Union for survival. Congress will cut off funds in 1976, but the CIA is able to run the war off books until 1984.
Jeez.
When funding is legalized again, this entirely pointless war kills 300,000 Angolians. They also, at this time, were calling the CIA the cult of intelligence. Victor Marchetti and John Marks published this whistleblowing history of CIA crimes and abuses. Marchetti has spent 14 years in the CIA, eventually becoming an executive assistant to the Deputy Director of Intelligence. Marks has spent 5 years as an intelligence official in the State Department. There was a diary published at the same time called Inside the Company by Philip Agee. Agee has worked in covert operations in Latin America during the 60s and details the crimes in which he took part. The Rockefeller Commission. In an attempt to reduce the damage done by the Church Committee, President Ford creates Rockefeller Commission to whitewash CIA history and propose toothless reforms. The commission's namesake, Vice President Nelson Rockefeller, himself is a major CIA figure. 5 of the commission's 8 members are also members of the Council on Foreign Relations, a CIA-dominant organization. And I would like everybody to go YouTube and watch Hillary Clinton deliver a speech to the CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, where she's like,
I'm glad you guys got an office in Washington, so now I don't have to go too far to hear what we're doing.
Yeah. Even though they're a private think tank.
yeah, whatever.
Not supposed to actually impact foreign policy. But that's here nor there, I guess.
1979, we're getting to the point where we were almost born.
Yeah.
So
Almost.
the CIA fails to predict the fall of the Shah in Iran, a longtime CIA puppet, and the rise of Muslim fundamentalists who are furious at the CIA's backing of Savak, the Shah's bloodthirsty secret police. In revenge, the Muslims take 52 American hostages in the United States Embassy in Tehran. Afghanistan. Soviets invade Afghanistan.
Yes.
How do you think they responded?
I would take a wild guess in the dark and say that they found some extremist groups to fund and train.
Do you know what they were called?
Can you tell me?
Al-Qaeda?
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Or my favorite way of saying it, pronouncing, everything's got a different pronunciation.
Yeah.
Al-Qaeda.
Yeah. Basically, for 10 years, the CIA funded the guerrilla movement in the Soviet-Afghan war and trained them in guerrilla tactics, bomb making. They gave them lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of money. Would you like to take a stab in the dark and say who one of the leaders of this group was?
Hold on. Let me think. Osama bin Laden.
Oh, you got it.
Okay.
So we
That's
have
weird.
Yeah.
That's weird that they have a history all the way that far back with Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, and remote-controlled airplane. I'm sorry, continue.
Yeah. So, they've been doing all of that work for all those years, helping them, giving them money. You would think that they would be really good, like, friends of each other,
Yeah.
right?
You'd think so. I mean, that's what I would assume.
Yeah.
So they helped fight off the Soviets.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Then the Soviets left.
Yeah.
And they lost a large army, a large established army, lost a war against guerrillas. Sounds kind of familiar too, doesn't it?
It does. All this sounds familiar.
Yeah.
It's like a script almost.
Yep. Sorry, go ahead.
You're fine. I'm just going to get back on this speed wagon real
Okay.
quick. El Salvador, same year, an idealistic group of young military officers were repulsed by the massacre of the poor, and they overthrow the right-wing government that was put in place, of course, by the CIA. However, the United States compels the inexperienced officers to include many of the old guard in key positions in their new government. Soon, things are back to normal. The military government is repressing and killing the poor civilian protesters. Many of the young military and civilian reformers, finding themselves powerless, resign in disgust.
Okay. So, PSYOPs.
Yes.
Can we talk about PSYOPs real quick?
Go ahead, because I'm fucking tired of talking at a fast
Okay,
pace.
yeah, I'm going to read a couple excerpts from PSYOPs manual given to Nicaraguan Contras, which, if you're not familiar, the Iran-Contra scandal is a pretty big deal back in the day.
Who was the general that they grilled and sat back like an OG thug when he was
man.
grilled by Congress?
See, now I'm trying to think. Oliver North was the general that you were speaking of before.
He just sat back like a gangster. Congress was like, do you know anything about the, Iran-Contra scandal? And he just looked at him like, bitch, I wish you would.
Yeah. So basically, these are excerpts from the manual. Also, keep in mind that they liked to find social crusaders, and they used them as useful idiots. This is an excerpt from that about social crusaders. The development and control of front organization is carried out through internal subjective concealed control, through group meetings of the internal cadres, and by calculating the time needed for the combination of these two elements to be applied to the masses. Established citizens, doctors, attorneys, businessmen, teachers, etc. will be recruited initially as social crusaders in typically innocuous movements in the area of operations. When their involvement with the clandestine organization is revealed to them, this exerts psychological pressure on them so that they can be used as internal cadres in groups to control. So, another thing that I wanted to touch on in this manual was the notion of making the civilians comfortable with these guerrillas, the Nicaraguan Contras, having weapons all around, but making it okay for them to have weapons, but anybody that was with the government, it wasn't okay.
Bad.
Yeah. This is another excerpt real quick, and then I'll let you take back over. So basically, This means that an armed guerrilla unit in a rural town will not give the impression that its weapons are a force that they hold over the peasants. That's weird they say peasants. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But rather that they are the strength of the peasants against the repressive Sandinista government. This is achieved through a close identification with the population as follows: hanging up the weapons and working alongside them in the fields, in construction, harvesting the grain, fishing, etc., giving explanations to young men about basic weapons, for example, giving them an unloaded weapon, allowing them to touch it, see it, etc.
Feel it.
Yeah, giving a basic description of its operation, describing with simple slogans how the weapon will serve the people in winning their freedom, adopting the demands of the people for hospitals and education, a reduction of taxes, etc.
I just had a note. In 86, the Nicaraguan military shoots down a C-123 transport plane carrying military supplies to the Contras. The lone survivor, Eugene Hassenfuss, turns out to be a CIA employee, as are the two dead pilots. The airplane belongs to Southern Air Transport. Can you guess who owns Southern Air Transport?
Who?
The CIA. The incident makes a mockery of President Reagan, who was at the time claiming the CIA is not illegally arming the Contras. And then in 86, the Iran-Contra scandal, although the details had long been known, the Contra scandal finally made it into the controlled American media. And Congress holds hearings, so we talked about earlier, and Oliver North sat there lying under oath, protecting the CIA and intelligence community. That's a good interview if you want to check out YouTube, Colonel Oliver North, Iran-Contra scandal.
Yeah.
Can you guess where we're back to?
Where are we back to?
Haiti.
Ooh, God, Haiti. They just keep fucking them, don't they?
So, rising popular revolt in Haiti means that Baby Doc will remain president for life, only if he has one short one. The U.S., which hates instability in a puppet country, flies despotic Baby Doc to the south of France for a comfortable retirement. The CIA then rigs the upcoming elections in favor of another right-wing military strongman. However, violence keeps the country in political turmoil for another 4 years. The CIA tries to strengthen the military by creating National Intelligence Service, SIN,
Yeah.
which suppresses popular revolt through torture and assassination. 1989, Panama. The United States invades Panama to overthrow a dictator that they put in power.
Yeah.
General Manuel Noriega.
Ah. Yeah, I know about Noriega, too.
Noriega has been on the CIA's payroll since 1966.
Because he was helping the CIA run dope.
Yeah.
By dope, I mean booger sugar.
Yes. That's how they ended up getting most of their funding, and probably still to this day, most of these government agencies don't have to report their income to Congress because they're not asking. They're still getting a shitload of money, but most of their money comes from drug smuggling, which is weird. You know, they smuggle in the cocaine and the heroin that's admitted in testimony of people who later killed themselves. Mm-hmm. But it's like, you know, if you then go out and get the cocaine or the heroin or the marijuanas and you try to sell it, they just put you in a state prison or a federal prison and use you as a slave for selling what they brought into the country.
Yeah, you know.
Details.
You know, this is like, you know, it's Underwear Gnomes thing, you know.
Yes.
They know the secret number 2.
Step 1, acquire drugs.
Yeah,
Step 2, question mark.
Step 3, profits.
1991, the Gulf War. The U.S. liberates Kuwait from Iraq. But Iraq's dictator, Saddam Hussein, is another creature of the CIA.
Ooh.
Huh. With U.S. encouragement, Hussein invaded Iran in 1980. During this costly 8-year war, the CIA built up Hussein's forces with sophisticated arms, intelligence, training, and financial backing. This cemented Hussein's power at home, allowing him to crush many internal rebellions that erupted from time to time, sometimes with poison gas. It also gave him all the military might he needed to conduct further adventurism, in Kuwait, for example. Fall of the Soviet Union, same year. The CIA fails to predict this most important event of the Cold War. This suggests that it has been so busy undermining governments around the world that it hasn't been doing its primary job, gathering and analyzing information. The fall of the Soviet Union also robs the CIA for its reason for existence, fighting communism. This leads some to accuse the CIA of intentionally failing to predict the downfall of the Soviet Union. Curiously, the intelligence community's budget is not significantly impacted after the demise of communism.
So now that they don't have a an actual enemy that the American people thought they were supposed to fight. I guess it's time for them to find a new enemy.
I wonder who it'll be. Do you think it'll be terrorists?
I think so, and I think that's going to be part of part 2.
Yeah.
Because it's coming up. I think we just tipped over an hour. So,
can I just mention one more?
Yeah, go ahead.
They kicked Haiti one more time in the balls.
Oh, nice.
That we have known of. In 1993, the chaos in Haiti grows so bad that President Clinton has no choice but to remove the Haitian military dictator, Raul Cedras, on threat of U.S. invasion. The U.S. occupiers do not arrest Haiti's military leaders for crimes against humanity, but instead ensure their safety, rich retirements, and safety.
Yes.
Safety, rich retirements, safety. 2 times.
Yeah.
Astride is returned to power only after being forced to accept an agenda favorable to the country's ruling class.
Oh, isn't that nice?
So I don't know about you guys. Hopefully I didn't talk too quickly for you, but
no,
we had a lot to get through.
There's a lot of
first half.
information. Yeah,
I don't know if I could have done a 3-part, but 2 parts perfect.
Yeah. So this concludes part 1 of our piece on the Central Intelligence Agency.
Man.
Well, Buns and Tubs Nation, we've gone through the coups planned, the false flag attacks, the psyops orchestrated, and the terrorists funded. But it's not over yet.
It's not over.
Not by a long shot. They have been pulling the strings of the backwaters of the worlds for 50 years, sharpening the tools of their trade and honing their methods. But it wasn't enough for them. They needed more. On the next episode, we will talk about the consolidation of their power and the intricate web of conspirators that helped in quite possibly the most tragic event since Pearl Harbor. An event so malicious and insidious that a generation now define their lives from before and after it. The moment that their plan for domination finally came to fruition.
Excellent.
We love you.
We really do.
America's chickens are coming home to roost.
This just in, you are looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center.
not so alarming. Though the mark has been